We're back here at Westonbirt Arboretum, and in a minute I'm going to show you how to turn out on a pole lathe very quickly turn out a Wickham pattern chair leg. But first I thought I'd introduce you to our pole lathe, or our version of a pole lathe. Pole lathe is a wooden lathe that uses a spring and a treadle to turn the work. Commonly that would have a 20-foot ash pole sticking out in front of the lathe. What we've done is screwed a spring, a leaf spring in this case, a wooden leaf spring along the back edge of the lathe, and we've tied that to a nodding arm, and that then is tied to the treadle. So when I pull this, you can see the spring working. So now when I push the treadle, you can see that the work is spinning, and the treadle is pulled back up by the spring on the back edge of the lathe. And that's all it is. I'm going to take you around the other side of the lathe now, and you can see how the lathe works and how the tools are used to turn this simple billet which I've roughed out. From this side of the lathe you can see what's going on. We've simply got a wooden bed, two wooden beams propped up off the ground, and there are lots of different ways of doing that. And then the centres of the lathe are fixed in between these two beams with a wedge. So crude adjustment, coarse adjustment is made by sliding the poppets up and down and to get them where we want. And then we simply tap in the wedge and the thing is fixed and locked up and ready to go. So this is the work that I had on there earlier. I'm going to put it behind the cord, put a couple of turns of the cord onto it, and then prop it up between the centres of the lathe. These centres are made just from 10mm threaded bar, bent and wound through a slightly undersized hole, and they thread themselves and they'll last for a good long time like that. And now when I press the treadle, the work spins, it reciprocates, so it bounces up and down, and I'm going to cut on the push stroke and take the tool off on the upstroke so that so I can keep a continuous cut, but a continuous cut interrupted by the upstroke. Well, all the lathe tools work in exactly the same way. The important thing is to get the back of the tool, the bevel, the slopey bit of the tool, resting on the work and just knocking on the work, and then you simply lift the handle of the tool and it automatically slides down, and you can hear the cut start, you can see it start. I'm just now knocking the tops, the irregular tops off the work. I'll just tighten that a fraction. And very quickly I can move along. And turn the thing down to round. And what I'm looking for in a chair leg is to have the middle slightly fatter than the ends. The ends are going to be about 30mm wide, so that eventually when the timber's dry I can make a 25mm tenon that joins into the chair seat. And I want it a bit fatter in the middle because there's going to be a joint for the stretcher to go in the middle of the leg. Now you can see that the lathe is geared, where the cord is running on a thinner part of the work. It's spinning faster, I'm getting more revolutions per stroke of the treadle. So I'm taking slightly lighter cuts with the gouge. There we go, so that's worked down to lozenge shape. You can see a little bit of bark left on the work there, and I quite like that. You can often see a little bit of bark on some of the turnings in my chairs, and for me that just illustrates that once upon a time they were trees. And yeah, I like that a lot. So the first thing I can do is use this wide flat chisel, and if I want I can prepare a finish straight into the work. And you can see I'm stopping the chisel when I'm going up on the upstroke with the treadle. That will leave a smooth enough finish to go straight into a chair. I'll do it now. I'll flip it over to get at the other side, just because it's slightly easier. There are arrangements of treadles and things where you can push the cord over out of the way to get at both ends of the turning without having to switch it round. But it's so quick to do, I generally turn it over. Okay, so that would be a perfectly adequate chair leg in its own right. It's smooth, it's well finished, it's elegant, it's made of ash, it's got a little bit of figuring from the bark on it which would add some interest, and that would be fine. But commonly, chair makers like to add a little bit of detail. So what I'm going to show you now is how to add the 3 bead pattern used on a lot of high Wickham chairs, with 3 beads at the top and a single bead at the bottom, which had a number of advantages, and one was that the old bodgers could stack them out in the woods using the beads to stop them rolling off each other. So imagine I've got about 1.5 inches buried in the chair seat, 1 inch, 1.5 inches buried in the chair seat. I'm going to come down about 1/3 of what's left of the exposed part of the chair leg and put a detail on there. And to do that, I'm using a simple tool called a skew chisel, which I'm using in 2 different ways. One to just cut a groove into the work, so there are my 3 rings or beads. To make it a little bit clearer what's going on, I'm going to roll this over with a gouge. Roll that down in like that, and you can start to see them emerge from the turning. And I'm just going to thin this out as well and put a more graceful inside curve into that. Putting a concave rather than a convex shape into it. And now I'm going to finish the beads. A bit uneven actually, but that'll do, they'll be alright. So now using the other end of the chisel, the other corner of the chisel, I'm making a rounding cut to just make them smooth and lovely. Or smooth and lovely enough. And now I'll just refinish this end where I thinned it out, smooth it out again with a wide flat chisel. That's the top end of the leg sorted out. And what I'm going to do now is flip it over and deal with the other end of the leg, the bottom of the leg. Put another bead in about here. Like that, and round this off. Like so. And then I could, if I wanted to, put a little bit of a foot on the bottom here, and you'll see that on some chair legs, particularly captain's chairs. That sort of thing have this slight foot shape cut into the bottom. Like that, you can see that little foot shape, the bead there and the foot shape and the 3 beads above it. Or I could thin this out and again look for a slightly wasted shape coming down through an inside curve, coming down through here. Now you can see that inside shape coming down is there, which is getting more graceful. Or I could get rid of this lump in the foot as well and try and pick this line up and run it straight through out the other side of the bead. And that is a completely traditional Wickham pattern chair leg. All that needs to be done now is to smooth it off with the wide chisel, the wide skew. that's it. That's a 3-ring Wickham pattern chair leg, all made and ready to go now, ready to go off and get dried. Or when I made 3 more, I'll have the start of a chair.